better sleep is probably the number one thing for brain fitness. But I can tell you right now, we've beat everything out there. You can be terrible all day long, but as long as you do a BrainTap session right before sleep, your brain will down-regulate. That's why we call it biohacking.
You're tuned in to the Dr. Kinney Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Erin Kinney, a naturopathic doctor and speaker dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of your body and guiding you back into balance. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Kinney Show. This week, I'm really excited to have joining us Dr. Patrick Porter, who is an award-winning scientist and has devoted his career to researching the brain, mental wellness, and cognitive function. He is the founder of BrainTap, which if you follow me, you know I post about using this amazing piece of technology, and I'm really excited to have him on the show to share about everything about BrainTap. So thank you so much for being on here, Dr. Porter.
Hey, it's great to be here, Dr. Kinney. It's always great to share the story and get more brains fixed out there.
Yes. So can you start by sharing kind of your journey and how did you found BrainTap?
Sure. Well, BrainTap was founded. I actually had a company that I had ran for 27 years. It was the largest self-help franchise. And I was selling a past piece of equipment called the Pathfinder that was similar to the BrainTap, but not as sophisticated as it is now. And when I sold that, I thought I was retired, but then 2008 happened. And so my sister said, hey, you better go back to work. She was the CFO for the new company. And so I went back and I said, what could I do if I could recreate this, something I did in the 80s? And I said, how could I bring it up to today's date? And I said, how could I put all the technology, think of it like a stereo system stacked on top of each other. And then we combined it all into a headset. And so we started that basically because I was going out doing speaking and I thought I need something when I share this technology with people, telling them about the power of light, sound, and vibration. I need something for them to go get. And none of the people that I had worked with in the past were willing to upgrade their equipment. They wanted to use the old style, the old 1990s version. So I thought, well, I'll just have to go create my own again. And so that's really the impetus of it. But I've been in this field actually pretty much my whole life since I was 12 years old, because my dad was a Silva instructor, the Silva method, and they use something called the Silva sound. So if people are familiar with that, that's a sound that actually puts you into alpha. And so we found out in the 80s that LEDs came out and you could do the same thing that you do with binaural beats with what we call biocular vision. We can train the brain through light as well as sound. And then we include vibration as well. So it's all part of a continuing journey just to figure out. And now we have science, with biohacking and things where we met. There's so much science out there in ways that people on their own can validate what they're doing. So they don't have to take my word for it anymore. They can actually, use the equipment, test themselves and use it. So I'm just super excited. It's a great time to be in the brain space right now.
It's so cool. And I remember, I think it was at the Orlando, you guys had set up where you could go and test your brainwaves before. And I think it was the night after the big party and I had too much to drink and I was down. And then after one BrainTap session for maybe 15 minutes, it was amazing to see the difference in all of my brainwaves. I mean, it's really incredible. You can just see that difference right there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Our first study that we published with the National Institute of Health, we published it with them. We took 100 people pre and post, 55, 65 years old that had never meditated. And we showed them in one session how we could improve their nervous system function by 30%. And we have a theory about the brain. And I didn't start the theory. It was a woman by the name of Dr. Ann Weiss. She wrote a book called The Master Brainwave. And so we've been using that. There's a symphony of brainwave activity. So what you noticed when you did the session was other brainwaves started to come online because unfortunately people out there don't realize that they're primarily in delta when they're awake. And that shouldn't be the case. We should have less than 10% of our brainwave in alpha. We should have 45% of our brainwave in beta, which is, think of the beta as the wide awake state and delta as being the sleep state. And in between those two, there's a state called alpha and theta, that's the powerful state for the parasympathetic system. So we need to engage that to heal and mend our bodies. So what we realized was it's not just like some people say, I use binaural beats and I go to alpha. Well, that's not really that important. What's important is that you go through, like I tell them, it's like a mini gym for the brain. We're going to take you through all the different brain waves, but most of our sessions are geared toward a specific brainwave entrainment, but they're all going through all the spectrum of brainwaves because we need to engage them all so we get that right balance. There should be about 30% alpha. So think of it as your intuitive mind. And so when you bring that on, you can become more creative. You can problem solve better. And these are things that we need today more than ever. And we need to teach people how to become more positive, because the negative propensity actually shuts down the nervous system. And so we need to get optimistic thinkers, and we need energy for that. So part of what we're showing is how can we get energy into the brain? How can we get the brain to regulate correctly? And then it's like riding a bike. Once you get your balance when you're learning to ride a bike, it's pretty easy to keep it going. It's just a matter of, keeping the training going.
Yeah. So, and is this what like brain fitness essentially is, what you're talking about? Like it's training the brain to go through all of these different states.
Yeah. Well, think of ancient times. We'd get up in the morning, the earth would become warm. We'd get hit with sunlight, norepinephrine, dopamine, cortisol would hit our brain. We would get out of bed because we were part of the food chain. So we get up and we'd start going. We wouldn't stumble to the coffee machine and, pour ourselves a cup of coffee. In fact, one of the worst things you can do for your brain actually is have coffee first, because we have what we call the cortisol trough. So when we talk about brain fitness, it's really a lifestyle. So in the morning, we need to wake up our brain, doing some breath work like breath of fire, or any kind of breath that's rapid breathing, or alkalizing breath or something like that, to wake up the brain. That would be better than a cup of coffee. And have your coffee at 10 o'clock or something like that after that cortisol trough. Because what happens during the day is the brain will actually drop. The cortisol will wean off about 2 o'clock. And that's when we have a drop in temperature, 2 degrees. And so that's another time for brain fitness. So we do a reboot at that time, and that's a theta reboot. So think about it like we're designed. I shouldn't say we're designed, but our bodies are, let's say, evolved in the Serengeti. So even though I live in North Carolina and people all over the world, these bodies still think we're supposed to be taking a nap at 2 o'clock. Because what do they do in the Serengeti? They sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what we do working against brain fitness is do a cup of coffee in the afternoon, or chocolate or tea or something like that. That's where tea came from. I'm not against those things, but you should first get your brain regulated first. And then the next time for brain fitness. So what I'm saying is there's 3 different times of the day and 3 different times of brain fitness. In the evening, most people don't know how to downregulate. The default mode network's going crazy. They close their eyes to go to sleep, and that's when the monkey mind comes online, and, 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping. So we teach the brain to downregulate down into delta, which is the only time the brain literally opens up and releases the glial lymphomic system. So this lymphatic system that we have in the brain, which they only recognize from 2015. So it's a relatively new discovery to the human body. Everybody thinks that's kind of crazy to think all these years in physiology books, they never talked about the lymphatic system in the brain, but now we know we have it, but it's only activated through deep sleep. So with 2/3 of the world not sleeping, that compromises the brain right there. So better sleep is probably the number one thing for brain fitness. But in order to do that, there's a lot of methods out there. I mean, you can go online. There's 100 people talking about it. But I can tell you right now, we've beat everything out there. You can be terrible all day long, but as long as you do a BrainTap session right before sleep, your brain will down-regulate, and you'll get into delta. So that's why we call it biohacking, because we're taking an external stimulus. And maybe Dr. Kinney, I should tell them why it works.
Yeah.
So they understand how
let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, as we're sitting here, our mirror neurons are actually at work. Every cell of your body has a mirror neuron in it, and it's actually evaluating your environment internally and externally. And what it's doing, it's saying, am I in a safe place? Do I have the nutrients I need? Do I have oxygen? It's like, think of it as the cell's brain. And then it's every 40 seconds, it's either upregulating your DNA or downregulating your DNA, depending upon if you're in a threat situation or if you're in a relaxed situation. So, and that actually is influenced by the way you think. Even your words can change 3,200 gene expressions. So as you think about everything, not just one thing, but everything goes into who you are right now. So if you change your environment, let's say you now you're wearing EMF protection, let's say that's proven to work. Now you're not getting hit by 15 million pulses per second from an EMF tower. So your body and your cells are always, and everything's a frequency and a vibration. So when we walk out into the sunlight in the morning, our body is told, like I said earlier, it's told to create cortisol, dopamine, and norepinephrine because we need that in the morning. At night, it's going to downregulate, and we're going to get more serotonin. And at night, when we go through our sleep cycle. So these mirror neurons are always evaluating the environment. Now, the thing is that our brain between our ears is basically a filtering system. I always tell people, think of a coffee filter, because the coffee we drink is not the grounds. So there's a lot left in that pot. So there's a lot left out here in reality that we don't see, hear, or perceive or experience. But we're filtering that based on mothers, fathers, brothers, teachers, preachers, everybody who's programmed us really to be who we are. And these mirror neurons take their cue from that. So when we think about stimulation like we do with light, sound, and vibration, light is the most under-prescribed nutrient on earth today because people don't get outside. In fact, they've done studies now that even if you're outside all day, you don't get enough sunlight because they're geoengineering our atmosphere. So we don't have the sunlight like we used to. But the sun, for those that haven't studied it, our sun is what's telling our body what to do. People talk about jet lag all the time. I tell people it's not jet lag, it's light lag. So your body is designed, just as an example, I already talked about the 2 p.m., your temperature drops. 2 a.m., it increases 2 degrees. 10 o'clock, if you don't get to bed by 10 o'clock, you're not making as much melatonin. You're not bed by 11 o'clock, you're not cleansing your liver. And we could go on and on about how the body functions. And it's all because of the pulsing star that we have, which is called the sun. And so if we don't get that light, now what we have an advantage over previous generations is we can hack that. We don't need to be out at sunlight or sunset to go to sleep. We can use red light therapy. We can use other light therapies like blue light is important too. So red, green, and blue light seem to be the ones that are most important. And green light shuts down the synapses. So at night, there's more green light in the atmosphere than there is blue light. And vice versa, there's more blue light in the morning. So and this is all going to basically be in harmony with our environment. Now, also, we don't get outside and walk around. Most people are walking around right now, listening to us with about 3 volts of energy moving through their body. That 3 volts of energy is actually an interference. I tell people it's like driving through Texas and you're between 2 radio stations and you can't make this. So your cells are trying to figure out what to listen to. So we need to clear that out. Now, what Clint Oper found in his book, Earthing, and this is something ancients knew a long time ago. If you go outside and you just touch the earth, then all that grounding stops. We did an experiment actually once with somebody who was EMF compromised. And we took them out to a tower. And of course, they start getting headache and dizzy because that 50 million pulses. So our earth has frequencies between 0.5 and 100. That's our pulses per second. So when you think about what tells our cells what to do, those are called earth frequencies. So when you get these foreign frequencies, the body doesn't know what to do. So it goes into what's called the cell danger response. And then some people are more compromised than others, but we're all affected. Some people just can mitigate that. So when you ground your body, that person that was compromised before, as soon as they took their shoes off, they grounded into the earth because the earth is the bigger thing. And we're designed to actually symbiotically, we don't have time to go through all of the details, but they can look at a YouTube video of Clint Oper and learn about grounding. But again, biohacking, I'm not at my office right now, but if I was, I'd have a grounding mat under my computer, which I have at all my computers. And every once in a while, I just reach over and touch it because we're standing in front of electromagnetic screens that are broadcasting signals to my body. And my body's trying to figure out, what are they trying to get me to do? Because we're light activated beings. I mean, and we're chemically processing and then we're activated. These cells activate without us. So it's like 25% of the time they say we go unconscious. So who's running the show? It's your subconscious mind. And when Bruce Lipton said 95% of your life is ran by your subconscious, he's not kidding because we're too busy being busy.
Yeah.
To beat our heart, to digest our food.
Do all the things. Yeah.
So all those things. So these mirror neurons work with us. And that's why when you go into these altered states using light, sound, and vibration, you're creating that coherence, a coherence field that organizes your body and mind in a way that says, hey, these are the things I want to do. But if you're incoherent, which means you're stressed, anxious, and I know I'm probably firing a lot at people, but the one thing is in common with all negative emotions is what drives people to see us as therapists. Usually something negative's happening in their life. There's a saying, All unhappiness stems from unfavorable comparisons. So there's something going on that people don't like. And so they come to see, maybe they're in pain, or maybe they've gained weight, or maybe they're smoking and they want to stop, whatever it is. And so they don't know how to create the image in their mind and make it manifest into their life, because the subconscious has been programmed. I mean, whether you intended it or not, you are who you are today by the sum total of events that have been part of your life. And so we need to sort those out. And that's something we're not taught in school. We're taught, hey, you learn this math problem, this English structure, but we're not really taught about how to live our lives.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's when I try to explain BrainTap to patients or friends, or like, what is that thing you post about sometimes? They're like, you put on these headphones, it flashes blue and red light. It just hacks you into this great meditative state. But then what's so cool is usually, and most of them, Dr. Porter here is talking through both of your ears. And then you have other sound waves where you're talking like in the right ear and in the left ear. So you're getting like two different messages. And I think when I've heard you speak, it's like you're speaking to the subconscious, correct? Like yes. We're getting the brain into that state where it's a little bit more malleable, where you can actually start to shift like what the subconscious thinks about your life, correct?
Correct. We have what we call first attention and second attention. And most people are always working on their first attention, but their second attention, which is what's the underlying reality for them. We have this tape loop going all the time. So when we're listening to somebody talk, and this is not a negative thing, it's just the way we're built, we're always judging them. You can't help it. We're saying, hey, that's true or that's BS, and so what we want to do, of course, with driving positive behaviors is we want to overload the senses with positive information. Yeah. And then what happens then is something called neural pruning. The brain has to rewire itself to get rid of the old thoughts to accommodate the new thought. In fact, there's a theory in neuroscience that says if we can get one new thought into the brain literally has to rewire itself to accommodate that one new thought. So my goal every morning is to find one new thing to think that makes my life better or improves it. Yeah. So then my brain rewires every day, because as long as we keep that neuroplastic experience happening, we don't have to worry about things like dementia or Alzheimer's. Yeah. Because it's all about energy and expansion in our brain. And as we age, unfortunately, our brain unwires. It doesn't wire. People have a misconception about learning. They think when you learn, you wire your brain up. That's totally wrong. When we learn, we unwire our brain, because when we're a child, we're in an infinite field of possibility. We don't know what we don't know. So we're basically have this awe and wonder. That's why people say you need to have a childlike mind, like when you're meditating and things like that. So you need to, but when we get fixated, like some people say, this is the way we've always done it. We've always, this happens. One example I like to give to my clients is you probably had an experience where it was the weekend and maybe you had to turn right to go to work, but on the weekend you had to turn left to go somewhere, but you automatically turn right. You go, oh, dang it. I'm not going to work this morning. I'm going the other way, because you go unconscious again. Your brain just takes over, says, don't worry about it. I got this handled. You go ahead and take your time worrying about whatever. I'll take care of your everyday tasks and experiences. So the brain has to be rewired, retrained really. And that's a daily thing. It's not something you can just do one day and then forget about it.
Yeah. You have to it's a practice, like anything.
It's like building muscles in the body. That's why we call it brain fitness. You got to do it every day. Yeah. And you can build it into habits, but you still have to do a conscious, like mindfulness practice of doing it.
Yeah. Like don't they call BrainTap the Peloton of brain fitness, correct? Keep it at home. We can do it every day, but it's really enjoyable. Like that's what I love about, sometimes I've done a lot of guided meditations, and sometimes when you're kind of like, I don't feel like it, but we put BrainTap on and you just feel so good. I think that's when I first got it, I did it twice a day for a year and a half. I kind of fell off a little bit, but now I'm back on. I do it about once a day. I tried to get into it today, but I was really diligent, and it was amazing. I felt good, but that year, so many positive changes happened in my life, like in my business and with my relationships. And so that was what was really cool. When you change your state, you're going to change what you attract, which is a whole other topic. But, I think it's a really fantastic tool.
Yeah. The one thing people talk about, we have a mental health issue in the world today. It's not really a mental health issue. It's a physiological issue, because our brain actually instructs our gut to make those neurotransmitters. So when you're spending the adequate amount of time in alpha and theta, especially throughout the day, as you go through your day, you're going to use up that bank account. So, but every day you get a new bank account. Yeah. So, but if you don't sleep well, you don't fill that bank account. And then if you do a BrainTap reboot in the middle of the day, you've now replenished that. Just to give an example, beta is dopamine. That's why it's a bad one, because it's an adjective.
Yeah.
And people that have addictions, they never get a satisfaction. Like whether it's cocaine, drugs, pornography, or whatever, you never get the payoff. You just get triggered to do it more often. So
does that mean someone who has an addiction, should they have more beta? They're in a beta state more often? Is that what that means? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Or they're under aroused and they need that to arouse themselves.
Got it.
They need to, that becomes their arousal mechanism, because you need dopamine to do that.
Yeah.
When you drop into alpha, you're going to create, and there's 54. I'm not going to go through all 4 of them, but the acetylcholine is important in alpha. That's why when you're sitting in a romantic getaway and you have a fire burning, that fire burns at 10 hertz frequency. It's your mirror neurons are matching that frequency, and you're creating acetylcholine while you're sitting there. So you're literally getting high in your own supply.
Right.
And that's like, it's a co-experience, right? You're there with somebody that you want to be with. And then when you drop into theta, you actually create GABA. Now GABA is a precursor to DMT. So DMT is what everybody wants to do, but every cell of our body has that molecule, but we just need to activate it. So we have this part in our brain that activates. So when you go through these sessions, you're activating this. Now, DMT is linked mostly to spiritual experiences. And when we have a natural propensity as humans to want to get outside of ourselves, to know there's something larger than us that's assisting us or helping us or doing, that's controlling the universe. It's not our little brains that are doing it. We call it consciousness. There's a consciousness that's doing this. And then when we drop into delta, which we should only do sparingly. At night, we should do it more often. That's when we fill up the serotonin, the happy hormone. But if we do it during the day too much, what happens, and when we scan people, like you saw the NeuroCheck when you came into our booth, we find that about 90% of the people are over 60% delta when they're awake, which means they're overproducing serotonin, and that becomes toxic in the brain. So everything in moderation, right? It doesn't, I don't care what you do, as long as you do it in moderation, you're going to be fine. But when you overdo it, sugar is bad, obviously. But if I'm at a celebration or a party or a picnic, I might have some, but I'm going to know I'm going to have to pay the piper, or I'm going to have to do some fat, fiber, and protein to slow it down. Yeah. Something like that.
But you said moderation, that also includes the other side. So, we have to have glucose to function.
Yes.
And cortisol, you touched on cortisol a lot. I talk about cortisol a lot on the show in my work. And, everyone's like, oh, too much cortisol. But, cortisol is what wakes you up in the morning. It gives you energy. It is what's controlling your circadian rhythm. So both ends, like moderation, you got to have just the right amount. We don't want too much or too little.
That's right. Yeah. It's all about balance in this reality. So, we get, there's no bad thing. I tell people, some people are too over aggressive, and then that, the old saying is you have to sharpen the saw, like in Stephen Covey's book, you got to stop and sharpen the saw. Some people are going so hard, they don't realize, like in our peak performance study with Julia Arndt, we did with the 1%ers at Google and Microsoft, we showed that if they took a 20-minute break, and this was bizarre to them because we had them do all the testing beforehand, and we improved their depression score 70%. They didn't think they were depressed, but they were so busy being busy, they didn't know.
Yes.
And then when we gave them the evaluation test, but then their happiness score improved 53%. But the thing that blew their minds was their work product improved 23%, meaning they got 23% more done by taking a 20-minute break in the afternoon rather than working through it. So some people think, oh no, I got to keep going. No, your brain is your most powerful asset. So if you can reboot your brain, you can have 2 mornings.
Yeah.
And that's the key here to success.
Exactly. Well, I'm a big fan. I call it getting horizontal in the afternoon. I prescribe it to all my patients. Like, you need to take 10 to 20 minutes and just lay flat. And, if you do the brain fitness at that time, you're going to get even an extra benefit, right? And you get a second morning, you're going to get a whole nother essentially day of being productive, which is fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. So people want to learn more, they can go to braintap.com, correct? And can they purchase the device there?
Yes, they can. They can also do a 14-day trial.
Oh, fantastic.
So they can download it. And we've had good results without the light. Now, what the light does, so people understand what the difference is, we've done a lot of studies, and what we find is when you close your eyes to meditate, the reason most people can't meditate, and only 5% of people continue meditating, which is a sad statistic. But the reason is 30% of your brain falls asleep. It shuts down because your optic sensory system takes up most of your brain. So
Yeah.
if we can supply it with light and energy, it stays awake.
Yeah.
So your body, it looks like it's asleep, but your body's awake. I mean, I'm sorry, your body's asleep, but your mind's awake.
Yeah.
And so the key is to do that. And then the other thing is that we showed that with the stimulus, like you're talking about the dual voice process or just using light, sound, and vibration, we've also shown that we can slow down the default mode network. And for those that don't know what that is, we have this network in our system that basically is like our backup system, if you will. If we stop thinking about what we're thinking about, it takes over for us. And it can be good and bad. You know, some people, their default mode network is actually stressing them out, you know, because they're looking at life as a threat instead of as a challenge. So the whole thing is to rise to the occasion, to look at life as a series of challenges, and that you have the skill set to handle those. That's why in prayer, we always say, you don't pray for God to eliminate your stress. You ask for the strength and, you know, the intelligence to handle that stress.
Yeah.
And then you, because we want capacity. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to get rid of their cell phones and their smart TVs and all of these things that are causing all the issues. So we need to build brain capacity to handle those things so we can still have a healthy life and enjoy all these great benefits. I mean, we have the world in our hand. I mean, I wish I could go back in time and play Trivial Pursuit with Google,
having a cell phone.
you know?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So, all right. And you're on people can follow you in all the places. We'll put everything in the show notes. Is there anything else you want to add about using BrainTap or brain fitness?
Well, I think the main thing that I like to tell people is don't allow other people to define who you are. You know, when I was growing up, I was held back in second grade. I was told I was never going to be smart, you know, and I never thought I was going to go to college, actually.
Oh, wow.
Even though my dad had worked with me since I was 12, you know, I just in the back of my mind didn't think it, but I got a track scholarship. So I was I got to go to college.
Yeah.
But, in those kind of things, but it was like, and then I found out I was pretty smart, you know, but you have to apply yourself.
Yeah.
And so and I think everyone, that's why my first book's called Awaken the Genius, because I think everybody has a genius. And when you think about genius, people think it's somebody like Einstein or Edison or something like that. But the word genius actually is a word from Roman mythology. And what it's about is everybody has a genie. So think of it like you have a genie and it houses your talents and skills. If you use that genie, you become a genius.
Ah.
So everybody has talents and skills. It doesn't mean you're smart at math or science.
Yeah.
You could be smart at working at cars, or you could be smart at dancing. You could be smart at coaching people. Whatever it is, everybody has their genius. And once you find that genius, if you're unhappy right now, and the reason I say that is in my clinics, when I used to have 108 locations with my franchise, and one question we asked was, are you happy with your job? 93% of the time people said no. If you are not happy with your job right here, right now, that's fine, but start preparing for your next job, because you have to find something that satisfies you, because you spend 1/3 of your life doing it. And what I always tell people is find out what you love to do that other people need to do or want to do, but can't do. And then you provide that niche and people will pay you to do that. And then you'll have the life you want. I still don't feel like I work. I feel like I'm still setting up I feel like I'm setting up a seminar for my dad, you know, all the time, you know, getting ready for one of his Silva classes or something like that.
Yeah.
I've been doing this so, and I love it. I mean, I used to do this for free because dads don't pay you, you know, so that's the way it works.
Yeah. I think it's so important. I see in a lot of the patients I work with, when you're unhappy in your vocation or your career, the physical body will kind of yell at you and they'll be like, oh, I don't like this. And I have some patients go through, you know, all kinds of treatments and all kinds of protocols. And then when they quit their job, that's when they feel better. They find something else that they're passionate about. That's when they start to feel better. So thank you for that. It's a great thing. Yeah. Do what you love and you'll never have to work a day. Is that what the quote is? Something like that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Well, thank you. This has been fantastic. So everyone go follow Dr. Porter and go check out BrainTap. The 14-day trial is a great place to start so you can see if your brain likes it, and your brain clearly will like it. Have you ever had anyone that hasn't responded well?
It's very rare. I mean, we sell thousands of these, you know, every month. So, you know, I always tell people there's 10% crazy out there.
Well,
so, you know, if you're looking for an excuse not to succeed, then, you know, please don't let it be us.
Yeah.
Find something else.
Yeah.
But if you, I've never seen anybody, in fact, with our group, we have 6,000 people out there that are either like yourself using it in their practice or using it for themselves and helping people. And we just had a group of them. They said they've never seen anyone that if they did the 21-day trial, didn't find that they would keep using it for life, because your brain it's like going to the gym. Once you realize you have to physically work your body, and it's not a pain, it's actually a pleasure, but you have to get through that pain part, because the muscles at first, they rebel, because just like your brain, they go, we've always sat on the couch, ate potato chips. What are you talking about? And you go, no, we need to stimulate the muscles.
Yeah.
And once you stimulate the brain, you'll have a craving for it.
Yeah.
And you'll want to do it because you feel good. Like you said, you have the world's greatest pharmacy between your ears.
Yeah.
You can activate it with a simple thought. So once you start activating that pharmacy, some people are just addicted to being miserable.
Yeah.
And we have to stop that, because there's nobody out to get you. There's nothing wrong. The universe is conspiring for your success. And as soon as you agree to work with it, you're going to find happiness.
Yeah.
It's a natural byproduct of our existence.
Yeah.
But you have to find out how you can add value.
Yeah.
Once you add value first to yourself, you gotta realize that you are here for a purpose. There's no accidents. You're not there. Whatever happened to you up to this moment in time was absolutely necessary to bring you to this message right here, right now. So you can say right here, you can make a line in the sand and say, today is the first day that I'm going to start living my best life. And you choose to do that. You have to choose to do, nobody's going to choose it for you. Your therapist, your counselors, your parents, everybody in your life can't want it more than you do.
Yeah.
You've got to want it more than they do.
Yeah.
And as soon as you do, that's why I love the biohacking community.
Yeah.
Because they're all just so motivated to work on themselves. And when we go to those events, we always see those are the best brains we ever scan.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're eating well. That's number one. They're moving and breathing. That's number two. And then they're doing some kind of brain fitness. And when we show them what happens with BrainTap, when Dave Asprey asked how many of you have the BrainTap, like 3/4 of the room raises their hand.
Yeah.
And just so, and I think that's because they can measure the results. So if you want measurable results, then you've got to do something to make those measurable changes. You can't just wish it.
Yeah.
It's not like you can just visualize it and not do something. There's a saying, faith without works is dead, right, in the Bible. So you have to do the work. You can have the faith that's going to happen, but then you got to do the work. And this work is easy. I mean, what's easier than closing your eyes and taking a 10, 20, 30-minute nap?
It's fantastic.
Right. So I always tell people, if you can procrastinate, you can be very successful at BrainTap.
Yeah.
So put off all the worry and stress for 20
Just
minutes.
Go BrainTap.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Well, if you're listening to this episode, this is the sign for you to go try out BrainTap. Everything has conspired to lead you here today.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. I like that.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Porter. This was fantastic. And I will see everyone next week.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kinney.
Thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to connect with me on social media and leave a rating and/or a review. This helps grow the show so more people have access to this knowledge that leads to empowered healing. Love and light, and see you next week.